Welcome to the Life at Ahead podcast. I'm your host, Nick Rodriguez, and I'm excited to have you join us today. In today's episode, we're diving into how Ahead sets our people up for success from day one. We'll explore our dynamic onboarding and acceleration process and dive into how we equip new hires with the tools, skills, and connections they need to thrive. We've got an incredible lineup of guests, including AHEADians who are 30, 60, and 90 days into their journey. They'll share their experiences and what it's really like to join the team. Plus, we'll hear from Vic Scott, who leads our new hire orientation, to learn how we bring Ahead story and culture to life. Get ready to be inspired and learn how we make an impact right from the start. Let's dive in. Welcome back, listeners. I have Sergio here with me today. Sergio has been working Ahead for almost 4 months as of today. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sergio. And we're excited to learn about your experiences so far. So, Sergio, how you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me. Very happy to be here, and excited to talk a little bit about my experience so far with Ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. But before we get started, I'd love it if you can do a quick little introduction of yourself and tell people a little bit about who you are and what you do at Ahead.
Yep, I'm here in South Side of Chicago, where I live with my family. I have two daughters. One's a sophomore, one's an eighth grader. A wife of 20 plus years. Um, been here for most of my life in the city. Recently joined Ahead from AWS. I was a partner sales manager there for just under 3 years. So doing similar type of work in a similar space in terms of helping customers find the right AWS solution and the right partner to deliver that solution. Now I'll be working with Ahead and AWS to help Ahead win services and deliver AWS for our customers. So excited to be here. Excited for the journey ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man, there we go.
Not
All
pun
right.
intended. I did not mean that, but I guess it kind of fits right into to where we should be, right?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. For the listeners who know, you worked in marketing for a little around 8 years here at Ahead. So like, yeah, the pun on the name is just like chef's kiss. It was so much fun. I think when I first started, our kind of like tagline was like think, look, plan, move, and it was all like think ahead, look ahead, move ahead, plan ahead. Yeah, endless amounts of wordplay on that. Even the signs you see out on the street, like something ahead, and I'm like, yep, all caps. You're meeting brand guidelines. So, um, thank you for sharing a little bit about what you're doing here at Ahead and some of your background, Sergio. Since you worked at AWS, I'd love to hear a little bit more about like kind of what your impressions were of Ahead before you had joined here, and what are your impressions of Ahead now that you've just started?
Sure. Yeah, but when I was with AWS, the impressions I had of Ahead were very strong, right? In terms of their ability to deliver and compete in the market, the competitive market, against other SIs, other consulting companies that were probably of much bigger scale, and which bigger scale doesn't always mean better necessarily, right? From what I was able to see and glean from my experience interacting with Ahead is they were on par or better than most of the GSIs that were out there, and just doing it at a much quicker pace. The ability to pivot, I think, is can be a superpower, especially when you're talking about complex engagements. And I think having the experience of being able to deliver not just cloud solutions, but infrastructure and kind of legacy hardware and solutions as well, along with the resale capability, just brought a lot of different variability where Ahead could fit into the mix. And that's something I was looking for in partners being on the AWS side that a lot of times, sure, GSI could provide, or maybe a small boutique firm could provide one element, but Ahead seemed to be in that right space, the right size, the right kind of band where it's big enough to deliver excellent results, but small enough to care, right? In terms of being able to say, "Hey, how are we doing? Do you have some feedback for us?" And now, having been here, I've seen that in action with our customer interactions, with the interactions I've had with other AHEADians and with peers I work with on a regular basis. We go to market in that same way, so it's consistent. It's not like changed over and it's like, wait, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. No, it's exactly what I thought it was going to be, and then some.
Yeah, I love that. This would be a very different interview also. Like, hey, we're taking a dip here. But I love that that we're living up to those impressions and that like what we present outwards is also how we operate inwards, right? And it's not just our sales team or people who are face to face with clients. It is everyone at this organization when it comes to being agile and thinking about impact and being really collaborative and always like, win-win situations, I think, is what we're really good at, and everybody wins. So, glad to hear we're delivering on that promise. Now that you've been here for 4 months, I'm curious, like, if you can reflect a little bit back on what your like first day or week on the job was like to you, and what do you think stood out the most?
I think my first day was certainly memorable for a lot of reasons. First day always exciting. It was a virtual onboarding, which wasn't new to me, having joined AWS, being a massive organization and being very decentralized. Totally fine with that. So coming into ahead, expected similar. So when I joined the virtual call for the orientation session on my first day, which is mid December, sidebar, kind of a weird time to join as well because it's end of the year, people are starting to wind down, or they're in the throes of trying to get deals over the finish line.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, and we can talk about that too in terms of how you find people's attention and get kind of onboarded and assimilated. But back to day one, it was interesting because you join this meeting, right? Just a number of faces on the screen in various boxes, trying to figure out who's who and where people are from and going through introductions slowly. And the person that was driving our session was very engaged, very interactive, giving a lot of information. And I assumed that I think most of the group assumed that it was a recruiter or someone from HR. And someone finally asked, excuse me, what's your role? He's like, well, hi, I'm Dan Adamany. I'm the CEO and founder of Ahead. So I think it took us all by surprise, but basically he just kind of ran with it and was totally chill and totally cool and just, having a conversation with a bunch of folks and getting them familiar and comfortable with the company. And it did it in a very unassuming, very personal way, which is awesome. I mean, that's a lot of what I heard about coming into Ahead. People spoke very highly of the culture, and that was something that definitely drew me to Ahead as well. And that's definitely a great first impression, right? Where you're in a virtual meeting, which can be cold and sterile and somewhat impersonal in a lot of ways, especially when you're talking about basic things like, day one type things. But it was a very different perspective. And then once you share that, I think that definitely broke the ice where people felt comfortable asking questions, and he was asking questions about each of us and our roles and what we were doing and why, and hearing from Dan himself exactly why my role is important day one is really exciting and really sending you off in the right direction with a lot of momentum.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our executive leadership team is like so approachable. From when I started at Ahead, it was about I think like 2015 ish was my first day, and like the ELT has always been like right there and is super easy to talk with. We were only 150 people at the time, so it was like you would run into them anyway
Right.
because there was only like a couple locations and I happened to be in headquarters. But now when we're at the scale, like 3K plus employees, like they're still just as approachable. Like I can still go find them at the office. We got the open office plans like a lot of people do, but they're there, they're around, and you can find the opportunities to go and have a conversation with them. And then they also create the spaces for you to do that too ongoing, right? Like it's not just, oh, did you miss them on new hire orientation? Too bad. It is leadership lunches. They have like open mic events and stuff like that. Like they are very accessible, and I really appreciate that about here at Ed.
Yeah, that's definitely something I was looking for in my next, move away from AWS, with going to a company where you had a bit more of that personal touch, where you had that direct line if necessary. It just feels a lot more comfortable, and it just I think brings a good vibe overall and energy to the whole team, because I think that closeness to the culture and the people who are setting the tone really allows everybody to kind of feel that, and it's kind of woven into
Mhm.
the fabric of what we do on a daily basis. So it's cool, and seeing it from literally day one, minute one, was a great way to jumpstart things. And then, within a week, I had a meeting invitation from Rich Falcone for a one-on-one chat, just a quick phone conversation to introduce myself and ask any questions, which again, really outstanding way to kind of get familiar with the ELT, with the company, and just to start to feel comfortable. Because as I mentioned before, right, joining in December, odd time, but getting interaction from the top was really cool.
Yeah, 100%. So you're talking about how like great and the accessibility and personal touch that we have at Ahead is, and that's a perk. But you're also talking about like December, it can be weird. Like
Right.
people are winding down or like really, really ramped up. So I'm curious, like, were there any like specific tools, training sessions, resources that you found especially helpful for you during your first couple weeks?
I did. Yeah, the learning system that we have, I use it this time to kind of just do the heads down necessary work. And there's a good tip from recruiting as well to say you may not be able to get people as easily as you normally could, right? being end of the year, and I understand that and appreciate that. So I took some of that time really just to focus on kind of knocking out a lot of the basics. And there's not that much when it comes to onboarding and requirements, but there are some things that we needed to get done, like all of the compliance training, going through a lot of the videos. So I took it as really a good way to onboard myself and just get ramped up. Having experienced the people portion of it already, getting into the content and the material was a lot easier. Having that kind of context to kind of go back to and draw where it didn't feel as isolated or as cold. I appreciate that. I'm more of a checklist type of person, so I was a big fan and proponent of having the checklist and this the section at Archie for new hire and new employee information is great. Tons of resources out there. So I was able to kind of use that time to do that heads down kind of necessary work to kind of check the box and a lot of things. And then at the same time, coming up for air and reaching out and setting up introductory meeting with folks who were either on my team or that I knew I would be working with at some point. It was a good balance. So I found that as an opportunity to kind of balance things where I wasn't totally overwhelmed going into customer meetings or team meetings right from the jump. And I also wasn't just doing things on my own 100%. There was a good balance and blend that I was able to kind of weave into that time.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned the checklist. I'm a huge checklist guy, so it's basically like what my everyday planner is. Like, I'm going to the grocery store. I'm like, absolutely love that little kick every time you get to slash something
That's what I
off
was
of there.
saying, right?
Yeah, totally. I'm curious, like, that's like getting some of the training done. You were talking about coming up for air and meeting with, some of your teammates and hopping on a phone call with Rich. What other parts of the onboarding made you or helped you feel connected to the company culture and your teammates as well?
I think just having that access, right? For me, it was a big thing I did having working now in specialty sales, um, understanding kind of what the lay of the land is. So being able to go and look at an org chart. I actually spent a good amount of time looking at the org chart, just trying to understand who everyone was, right? Not only
Yeah.
within my team, where are the dotted lines, where are the direct lines, how do I kind of navigate a new organization and start to think about what my own brain is going to be. Kind of where do I start? Do I start bottom up, top down, kind of parallel? So it gave me that to me was a big resource and understanding some of the concepts of frameworks that are already in place. So understanding kind of what the rhythm of business looks like from a how a head delivers, how
Yeah.
we, how do we put together a proposal? How do we put together a statement of work? Who does that? I know some of that still in the process of being reworked as well, but just knowing that stamp shot in time, kind of where things are. I think some of those training videos that were put together over the last year that spoke to that were really helpful for me to just understand. Okay, so this particular role, like what's a CSP versus a CD, right? What is a CD? So just putting together that my own decoder ring of all the various acronyms, understanding how those acronyms tied to roles and what those roles meant within a team. That to me was valuable. So it was a combination of the information that was on that checklist in those videos, along with the org chart, which was always and still to a certain extent is always open on my screen just to kind of navigate and say quickly, who is this person? Where am I working? How are we working together? That's usually one of my go tos, much like a checklist, right? Hey,
Yeah.
this is day to day. It's either that or quickly hovering over someone's alias in Outlook or Teams just to know. All right, I understand why this person's reaching out.
Yeah, totally. I like the org chart up. I think it's one of those things where it's like I'm not really necessarily looking at it as like hierarchy, like who reports to who or what level you're at. It's just like where are you and how are we connected, sort of thing. And I think that's what it can tell a story like that where you can see it. And I think it's a lot of fun to usually go and check it out. And I'm the same as you. Anytime someone's reaching out to me, I'm like, okay, where you at? Where you from? Like, let's it's hard for me to work with someone if I don't know a little bit more about them. And so that's kind of like my first step where I'm like, hey, we can both agree. And like, we both work here. This is something that we have in common. Like, what do you do?
Yeah, no, totally. And my manager did a great job sending my introductory email to the broader team and mentioning that I lived on the South Side. And surprisingly and refreshingly, there were lots of Southsiders within the head as well. So I got a couple of intros that way as well, which again helps break the ice when you're coming in somewhat cold to a new company at a keep saying right strange time to join, but it felt good and really set the tone and gave me some runway to be able to start setting up meetings in January, leading up to SKO, where a lot of those pre meetings I had where it was just kind of quick connects either on the phone or on Teams or even just a quick email exchange. You start to see folks in person when we're down in Atlanta. I'm always scanning at badges to say, oh yeah, wait, I know that name. I'm going to go introduce myself. I'm more of an extrovert than an introvert, so I'm comfortable going up and just starting a cold conversation and introducing myself and kind of being familiar in that sense. But having a some way to broker a conversation or some context around things always helps. And those things we've talked about, right? Kind of behind the keyboard, doing the pre-work, helps when you're out there in the field. And the field
Yeah.
can be right our own internal meetings, not just necessarily with a customer.
Yeah, everything's a field, right? And I love the amount of like what you're talking about, like this pre-work, and when you're talking about like your decoder ring of everything like that, right? There's the way that we can all talk about stuff, right? Like when I mentioned this in another interview when we talk about collaborate, innovate, drive, serve, and grow. Those are our values, and when we look at those words have a different probably idea of what those mean. So then the head does a really good job with their values and action competencies to clearly define what those are.
Mhm.
I love your approach where you are looking at things. You're like, okay, how do I speak this? How does this make sense to me? How do I navigate this field in a way that I'm still like walking the walk, talking the talk at ahead, but I know like you're like prepping yourself to be able to navigate it on like almost like I don't want to say like your own terms, but you're figuring out how you fit in and like what you can bring to the table, sort of thing. I think it's really awesome that people like kind of like the unsung efforts of people who are putting in a lot of work to make sure that when you get into a meeting, you're getting stuff done. You're ripping through that checklist. So it's awesome to hear that you're doing that. I bet you've been crushing it already in your first 3 months here.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's been fun and it is worth it, right? Putting in that pre-work and that homework just to feel comfortable. I like to make other people feel comfortable as well. I don't want to be a burden in any way, shape, or form. I don't think any of us do, right? We're all kind of high achievers and type A personalities if we're in this business. So I just want to make sure I'm able to kind of catch up and not have, the car slow down for me as I'm trying to jump in. Just keep it racing ahead and I'll catch up and we're gonna go fast and we're gonna win. So that's type of my approach to helping us maintain that pace where I'm adding value rather than slowing us down.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, like, in your time here now, you're doing your homework and getting prepped for stuff and meeting with a lot of folks. Where have you seen yourself grow or contribute to the team since you've started?
I think it's just I wouldn't say reinventing, but identifying and understanding what my brand is internally, because it was very different, right? With AWS now as a partner, it's making sure how I have a good grasp of what that means as I'm interacting with the partners now, right? I am a partner, so I'm working with AWS, right? How do I represent ahead? How do I represent myself? How do I use that familiarity and comfort I have with the knowledge I built from within AWS and kind of how they work to help ahead and us and our team with. So it's really understanding and kind of brokering a lot of that relationship because I'm, a cloud specialist focused on partner sales, focused on AWS. Um, so I think understanding what my role is there, right, as opposed to what it was, or what my role is here, as opposed to what my role was at AWS, is just understanding that, right, trying to find that direct line of connection where I can speak on the same level as an Amazonian, and then quickly flip my hat the other way and talk as an AHEADian. I think that's been a area of growth where I think I've been able to quickly accelerate and help our teams.
You mentioned what kind of understanding what your personal brand is and kind of setting that stage here at ahead. And I already mentioned this. I'm in marketing, but I'm huge on personal branding. I've got like my own little catchphrase, like when you're working with me, there's only two outcomes. Either I know how to do it and I'll get it done, or I don't know how to do it. I'll learn how to do it, and then I'll get it done. And so I think branding is like so important and critical, especially like anybody in their career. But I feel like people who are usually getting started out either in their career or someone somewhere new can always benefit so much from some personal branding. So like I'd love to kind of get your thoughts or like, how do you approach personal branding?
I think it's understanding kind of first and foremost who I am, right? And it's taken me a long time to figure that out professionally. Personally, I think we're all always aspiring to grow and transform and identify kind of who we are, right? Given a point in time. And for me, it's just trying to take those things that have been consistent throughout my career and throughout life, and just be my authentic self. Being comfortable representing my authentic self. I think that's most important. And I don't think that was always something I did right early on in my career because you want to fit in, you want to be successful, you want to move. But I've learned that you can still be your authentic self and be successful and move the team along, right? And make a difference and contribute in a lot of ways. and just being comfortable in your own skin and communicating that with your teammates, right, and with whoever you're interacting with. It's just letting them know up front, like, hey, I'm very direct, right? I like to win. I like to communicate, but at the same time, prefer that we have direct and honest conversations at all times,
Mhm.
right? I have thick skin. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I'm going to try and be as communicative and receptive as possible. But I've also taken time to learn that to be a communication, right, is just as much about talking as it is about listening. So I think my
Yeah.
listening skills have evolved over the years. Having grown up in consulting, and now back in consulting, it's key and essential, right, to understand what the needs truly are and just be a good listener, not just to your customers' needs, but internally as well. And just trying to read and pick up body language and just the nonverbal signs go a long way, right? And not taking an email or a text message to the wrong way either, right? Just always assume good intentions. Always assume that, right, people want to help, and not being in a rush to make judgments, right? Just keeping a fresh, and that's where I keep that fresh perspective and that honesty, um, to kind of broker and bridge any awkwardness that there might be, or with the communication. Just say, hey, we're gonna make mistakes, fail fast, move on. Just don't make the same mistake twice, right? That's something I try and live by, and that's something I always reinforce to my kids. Of like, make mistakes. It's great because you're experimenting, you're iterating, but get better from that mistake and just keep building on that. So, oh, I've made mistakes, already within my time here, and part of it's process, part of it's going too fast, and just reminding myself, hey, take the time to listen, to understand, ask questions. There's a time to ask questions. I think part of that is just picking that up and learning through those experiences of, hey, maybe that's not the best time to ask this question, but you find the right time, ask that question, regardless of whether you think it's dumb, awkward, whatever it might be. If it's important to you, make it important for somebody else.
Hmm. Yeah, I like what you had to say about kind of like making mistakes and failing fast. I think the only mistake made is a mistake made that you didn't learn from. So
Yeah,
like
exactly.
learn from anything is going to be repetitive, then it is a mistake. But otherwise, that's a learning moment, right? One of our values grow. That's what we're talking about. Like who's growing without making mistakes, right? Like it's going to happen eventually. So I think kind of embrace it and learn from it, and you know that it's just part of the process. And then the other part that you're saying is bringing your authentic self. Like that is my secret weapon. That is why part of like I'm assuming like objectively I have the skill set to be able to do this, but I also bring other things to the table that are required for my job. And that's why I was hired for whatever this position is. So my authentic self is like the value add to what I'm doing. So
Exactly, exactly.
awesome. Well, I think you've already been given a ton of great advice about, personal branding, doing your homework, like just getting in there. But I'm curious if we can, I want to create the space. Like, do you have any direct advice that you'd like to give to someone who's just starting out at ahead?
Yeah, hit me up. I'm happy to help and answer questions.
I do. Yes.
um, I may not have all the answers, but I can certainly help. But kidding aside, it's just, put yourself out there, right? Don't feel like people aren't going to always come to you and introduce themselves. So make sure that you're outgoing, and if you're not comfortable making that outreach yourself, get with somebody who can help you kind of broker that outreach, but make those connections early, 'cause it's going to help you, and it's going to make everything better, right? When you're in a meeting and you start to go into the office, or you're at an offsite, or you're at a QBR, and you have that familiarity with the folks in the room, it's just going to make the content all the more meaningful, and it's going to make the vibe in the room, I think, all the more collaborative. So I would strongly encourage folks to be proactive in their outreach, and I'm happy to help broker a conversation if there's somebody in my org or somebody that you're looking for, wherever. For real, just you can always hit me up. I'm comfortable with doing that and happy to help everybody win.
Sergio, I've been asking a lot of guests about advice to other Edians. I think you're the first person to just directly be like, reach out to me. And that is like peak networking and your brand, right? Like I'm like walking away from this conversation. I know exactly what you're about. And I think that's like, you do such a good job of making that very like clear from the get-go. So I think, a lot of people can learn a lot from you, and I'm so glad that I've been able to have you on the podcast to share some of the lessons that you've learned along the way and your experiences. I've learned a lot from you, and I hope our listeners take this opportunity to kind of practice what you were talking about too, and listen and take some of this in. So thank you for your time, Sergio.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It was great being here, and hope to meet many of our listeners here down the road.
Awesome. Thanks, Sergio.
Thanks.
All right, listeners, I have David on the line here. David has been at AHEAD for, I think we were just talking 4 weeks, potentially around 30 days. David, how's it going?
We're going pretty good. It's been a whirlwind since joining the company, but I've enjoyed every single day that I've been here. I learn something new every single day. The teams that I work on, very, very helpful. Everybody in the company's been extremely helpful since I got here. So I'm extremely excited to be a part of the head and extremely excited to be doing this podcast with you today, Nick.
Yeah, excellent. Man, I was so honored when you had said that you had listened to it before you had made a decision to work here. It was like the coolest thing. I like printed the screenshot. I've got it hanging next to my desk over here. I thought it was so awesome. So yeah, super stoked to have you on the podcast. But for the listeners who don't know you, which is probably a lot of people ahead because you've only been here for 30 days, can you tell us a little bit? Can you introduce yourself and maybe tell us a little bit about your role?
Yeah, so I'm David Bowens. I'm located largest city, the Austin, Texas region. My role here is at Ahead. I'm a ServiceNow business analyst within the ITSM ServiceNow practice here at the company. So a little bit about my role and what it entails. So I'm in a series of meetings pretty much every single day, whether they're workshops or just ad hoc internal status meetings with the project team. They're trying to get a footing on in terms of where the project is heading, if there's any blockers, things of that nature. I'm logging some of the risks, the issues, decisions, actions, all different requirements that um, the client proposes during these various workshops. I'm making sure that those are logged so that our business process consultants or our technical consultants can look through and ensure that no requirements are missing. I do a lot of testing of the stories as well, so making sure that they're not only functionally working the way they're supposed to be working, but also systematically as well. And that's
Yeah.
across through all of their environments, the development, test, and the production environments as well. When I'm not doing any, sort of billable work, I'm always looking at ways to improve the ways to improve the practice as well. And so that's a lot of this kind of process improvement. So looking through a lot of our various resources that might be outdated and looking at ways to kind of update them or improve them altogether and just figure out different, innovative and creative ways again to help improve our practice as well. And so, all that, bundled up makes a great, business analyst here at the head. So yeah.
Wow, Dave. I mean, you got the playbook, dude. You're already 30 days in, and you've got that story already packaged up. Let's go. You got it, man.
Yeah, I have a little experience, prior experience being a business analyst before. And so this coming here it's just a matter of learning just the new processes and kind of just, rewiring my mind to make sure I'm following the processes that are already laid out here at the head. So
Yeah, awesome. And speaking of ads and why we're here today, I'm curious, like, you're 30 days in. What were your like impressions before starting here, and what were your first impressions when you started here?
oh, wow, that's a good question. I think my impressions before I started working at Ahead was that I knew Ahead was a great culture. I'm a person who's always on LinkedIn pretty much every single day. I'm always networking with individuals in various industries at various companies. And so prior to working at Ahead, I, did my kind of LinkedIn search as I was going through the interview process and reaching out to individuals who were currently already in the role as a ServiceNow business analyst and kind of just asking them, about their day to day and how, they enjoyed working at Ahead. And I was also reaching out to some other individuals that had worked at my previous company at CDW before that now work at Ahead as well. Just kind of just understanding how, the difference between the CDW ServiceNow practice and here at Ahead and how they're kind of like bridging that gap and enjoying that process as well. So I knew that the culture and how things were ran here ahead was something that I could be on board with. In my position here at Ahead, when I started, on February 10th, I was extremely amazed at how organized everybody was. Like the organization in here and the amount of resources that are available to you and your role is top notch. I feel like I have access to everything that I need. And if I don't, somebody make sure that I'm able to get that access, whether it's internal or external. And so I'm extremely, happy and I'm proud to be a part of an organization that really, makes it easy for me to do my job every single day, and that's to help, improve client outcomes. And so yeah, I'm extremely excited again to be here. I don't know how many times I keep saying that, but it's truly an honor to be here working at AHEAD. So
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, and I've been here 10 years. So you got you got another 10 years ahead of you saying stuff like that. But dude, I really like how activated you are. You're finding people in the role, right, and talking to them, and then you're finding people who are also at your previous company who are now there. Like you said, you're always networking and stuff, but like that is someone who's ready to go, right? Like you hit the ground running for sure.
yes. And I think a part of that, Nick, stems from the simple fact that I had to make the transition. So I wasn't always a tech professional. I actually used to be a teacher. I taught sixth grade math and science. I did a Teach for America program. So I was doing that for about, 4 to 5 years. But I knew kind of during the pandemic, I wanted to kind of switch into the tech space, but I didn't necessarily know, which ecosystem I wanted to go into. And thank God for ServiceNow. Thank God for the NBA because during 2020, I actually did a partnership with the NBA to hold their COVID season. And so that's kind of where I started to understand like, hey, ServiceNow has all these different use cases for organizations and industries that, that I find passion in. So this is something
Yeah.
that I could see myself doing in the long run. And so, I did my ServiceNow apprenticeship for 3 months, learning about everything there is to learn about ServiceNow. But then I also made sure that I established what I called my five MVP, my five most valuable players. And so that's me, finding individuals within the ServiceNow ecosystem that have done the work, that have, started from, entry level and now are up all the way into, directors of their practice and just kind of picking their brains and holding those small coffee chats with them to kind of just understand, what do I need to do as a person new to tech, new to service now? How can I make sure that I position myself in the best way possible to make sure that one, I, remain employable, and two, that I'm always somebody that's can be spoken to when they're not present in rooms as well. And so once I did that and I networked and, I'm part of a lot of different discords and chats and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
once I got my footing into the ServiceNow ecosystem, I made sure that I'm also giving back as well. And so for new individuals who are new to the ecosystem and are wanting to learn ServiceNow, I'm always, available to offer this kind of the advice that I was given and also things I learned along the way to help them kind of, carve out their own journey within this ecosystem. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a fun journey so far, and it's always lots more to learn and lots more to kind of go in terms of my career. But so far, so good.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a quick mic check on my listeners. I hope everybody else is taking notes because I just learned a bunch from you right there, David. That's insane. Like, way to go, man. Like, I was so happy and proud to have you on the team. And like, quick shout out to our recruiting team for finding you or like working with you or whatever, because I can tell that you're already like, you know, ahead ready is what I'll say.
Yes, it's a great term for it. Head ready.
Yeah. So, speaking of being ahead ready, what was your like? How would you describe your first day or your week on the job, and what do you think stood out to you the most?
So my first day was pretty much just orientation with Vic Scott. Amazing person, super organized. I loved all of the information that she shared in terms of just new hire resources, where to find it in Archie. And then also just the ability to have the tech personnel come to make sure that everything was set up so we didn't have any outstanding questions was amazing. And I also love the fact that it wasn't all day on a call. For the most part, it was the beginning of it was very kind of like synchronous, but then the later half of it was asynchronous, and I had checkpoints throughout the week with my manager. So it kind of gave me, starting points of kind of what to look at, the different projects that I would be on, and kind of just going through those various overview. So I would say kind of by the second or third day, I was already in project meetings, and so I was ready to hit the ground running. I was
Let's
ready
go.
to
That
hit the
is
ground running.
already.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, so I kind of spent the first couple of days just reviewing documentation, reaching out to my peer, just kind of this understanding, what it entails to be a business analyst here at Ahead. And then, I did a couple of shadow sessions with Mike, my manager. And then after that, I was, on my own, and I've been on my own since my third day. So
Just David doing his thing, man. You doing then like kind of like the networking that you're talking about, right? Hey, you've already been talking to people. Let's keep learning. It seems
yep,
like you have a really big appetite for growth.
definitely do. I'm always looking towards the next level in my career journey. And so I'm always, pinging people like, hey, like, I have interest, in doing X, Y, and Z. I see that you have expertise doing this. Can I pick your brain? And so, I have like a few coffee chats set up for this week and next week as well with individuals here at the company. They don't know me. I don't know them, but we'll get to know each other on that call.
We're gonna
So,
change that real quick.
right.
Absolutely. I'm curious, were there any like specific tools or training sessions, resources, whatever that you found especially helpful in your time so far?
I mean, now learning because I'm in service now, so like now learning is something that I've used previously, but I did request from my manager because I love the way that he does his wireframes, and so I was requesting the specific software that they use so I can kind of train and learn on it as well. And so I'm leading some kind of ITSM process improvements around our wireframing process and having templates and stuff ready to go. And so that's been a tool that I just kind of doing I call it a side quest, but it gives me time
Yeah, man.
to be innovative, and it's like an arts and crafts project. So I love doing it when I have the time to do so. But a lot of the tools that Ahead uses, I've used previously in other roles as well. So nothing was too unfamiliar to me.
Yeah, I love also how you identified a software that other people on your team were using. You're saying you're later, and then requested it. And we're talking that you're in your first 4 weeks, and how quickly did you get access to that software?
I got access to the software probably within a day or two. The IT shout out to the IT team here at Ahead. They're very quick at making sure that whatever resource or whatever application that you may need in order to do your job, that you get access to it in very timely access as well. So it was seamless. It was almost within a day or two.
Yeah, dude. Shout out to the team. Honestly, I was running into a challenge with the software that we're using right now to record this. Dude, 3 minutes later, I've got a ping. We're on a call. Boom, boom, boom. Troubleshooting, and look at this. We're good to go. So, definitely a big shout out to our IT team for sure.
Yes.
I'm curious. So we're talking about like the tools and the programs and your first impressions and stuff, but like, how did the heads onboarding help you feel like connected to the company overall, like our culture and your teammates?
Yes, and so a big part of the onboarding process here at Ahead is really understanding the mission, the cultures, and the values, and how those values and our core values, you will, all correlate with each other within your individual practice, and how you can see, when you're on work calls or project meetings with your fellow team members, you can see how they truly breathe and live these values of the company. And so this makes it a lot easier to kind of just be immersed when everybody's kind of on one alignment, one accord, when it comes to ensuring that we're delivering the best, service possible that we can for our clients. And so Ahead does a great job in just kind of instilling those values into you day in and day out. And it's not only throughout onboarding, but throughout all of the different programming that goes on here at the company.
Yeah, I take our values pretty seriously. One, because it's part of my job, but two, like I just really believe in them. Like when like, it's other companies and stuff that you talk like I can go to somewhere and maybe I'm like dining out. They're like our values here at this restaurant. I'm kind of like okay, yeah, whatever it might be, but like it's here to head after my 10 years. Like when we say collaborate, innovate, drive, serve, grow, like every day I can point at that happening. I can see it happening like constantly in like a drive. Again, I'm using the words already still, but like a drive to meet those values. And something really cool that actually my team, the TDX team, had launched just recently, I think it was last year, is our values and action competencies, right? So I can say those 5 words: collaborate, innovate, drive, serve, grow. They can all kind of mean something differently, however you're looking at it, but we've defined what they mean at Ahead. And then the competencies for like, hey, this is what it means when to our values when whether you're an individual contributor, leading self, leading others, or leading a function, right? And so it's already mapped out for there. So like when we say those words collaborate, you can go look it up and it's like this is what we mean.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree. It helps create raving fans, not only out of your internal, employees, but also out of your clients as well when those values are truly upheld and, and pursued throughout. So
For sure. How have you seen yourself grow or contribute to your team since you've started? Like, what's your quick 30-day resume?
Um, last week I actually got some shout outs. I was just amazed at how quickly that, other members of the project team to see how I was adding value to them, just being able to come in and and I'm always a person where I don't ever want to step over toes. I'm more of like an assister, but when part of my job is just to make sure that, when we're presenting client facing documentation, that it all kind of looks and sounds and feels like that ahead brand. And so, sometimes I'll ping, a delivery lead or whoever's leading a workshop about a presentation, and they'll be like, "Yeah, you can make some adjustments and edits to it." But then when I give it back to them and it has that that head branding to it, and it kind of looks a lot different, they're just like, "Hey, like I'm not a PowerPoint guru, and like you just completely transformed my presentation. I actually like it." So just being able to kind of just come in, as an additional resource and to be able to just add value to our client facing materials, our deliverables, and just within the practice as a whole, and people to actually notice, the great work that I'm doing here. It makes me feel better. It makes me want to, contribute a lot more to the various projects and figure out different ways I can just kind of help improve each project and improve our practice as well. So
Yeah, love to hear that. Love to hear that you're already getting recognized because you can have that kind of impact right away at a head. We enable that, right? Um, the other a couple other things. Anybody who's listening and who knows me knows that I'm a huge PowerPoint guy. So I'm gonna have to check out your skills later because I'm all about it. That's where I kind of like my bread and butter and where I got started at a head was making sure that all of our sales rep, whatever they were presenting, it was in a head branding. Kind of like if you're asking a client for $1 million, it better look like $1 million proposal. And so it's great to hear that you've got kind of like that eye for it too, and that you're implementing it because it's important, right? Like I believe in the value of like how you present, like what you're presenting and how you present it. And it's great that like you even had the autonomy and you took the initiative to jump in there and offer your expertise. And so I know you said you're kind of like more of like an assister. I'll call it like a facilitator, right? Maybe you pass first, but you also know how to shoot. So
right, exactly. Great basketball analogy.
yeah. Shout out to my buddy Chris for getting me in his fantasy basketball league this year. I've learned a ton. Um, I'm curious, it sounds like you've had an insanely successful first 30 days here at Ahead. Like you said, from day three, you've been operating on team calls to getting recognized by your team and really finding a way to facilitate and create value for your team, yourself, and our clients, most importantly. Well, I got to know, what kind of advice would you give to someone who's about to start at Ahead?
Um, the advice I would give somebody that's new to a head is don't be afraid to ask questions and don't be afraid to volunteer yourself for more. Um, there's no such thing as a stupid question. There's that saying that closed mouths don't get fed. And so if you're not
Yeah.
opening your mouth to ask what it is that you need to do in order to do your job successfully, you're going to be stuck in your role, and you're not gonna be happy in your role. And that creates a lot of just adverse effects, and it affects your work overall, which in turn could potentially affect your employment. You don't want that to happen. So just being not afraid to ask question. And then the second piece I would say is, again, just volunteering yourself. There might be some things that, you know, some of the projects might need help with that you might not have experience in, but you want to learn. Just be able to just volunteer yourself. Somebody will, potentially, add you in or just be able to teach you what it is that you need to know for that particular value add. So those two things I would say are the biggest. They definitely helped me here at a head up so far in my journey here. Just being able to again ask questions and then ask where else could I offer my expertise and assistance for. I think those are the two biggest things for me. And then of course network. Don't just
Yes.
network with the people who are within your team or within your practice. Network with other people's in other parts of the business as well, because you might potentially, work together on a project one day and already having establishing that rapport that makes this makes the project work a lot easier. So those would be, the top advice I would give to somebody new to a head.
Great advice, David, because as someone who's been here for a long time, it's the same advice. So I think you're you're definitely on the right path. One of the things, kind of thinking about some of the things you said, my boss actually shared a quote from her daily quote calendar today, and it was growth and comfort do not coexist. So yeah, when you're asking questions, you might be feeling a little like some imposter syndrome or like, oh man, why am I doing that? But like every question, like to anybody who knows, is a sign of growth, right? When you go to ask something you don't know something, now you have the answer. You just grew. Like you just now you know something else. And so like when we are doing that, when we are asking questions, we are growing, we are living our values, and everyone is better off because of it. So
Yeah, I definitely
great
agree.
advice, David.
Planting the seed early. I definitely agree.
There you go. Totally. Well, David, I've appreciated having you on the podcast today. You mentioned side quest. We've also got basketball, so I bet we're gonna have a couple more conversations in our future. But really appreciate your time and thank you for jumping on the podcast and sharing your story.
Of course, Nick. Thank you for having me. I love doing this, and anytime you need me to do this again, you know where to find me.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, David.
All right, thank you.
Welcome, listeners. I have Vic Scott here with us. Vic has been leading our new hire orientation for about the past year, and I'm really excited to learn more. Vic, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well, Nick. I appreciate you asking. How are you?
Not too shabby. Vic and I were joking before the recording got started that it's the first Tuesday of the month that I'm recording on, and so the tornado sirens are going off, and I was worried it was going to interrupt our podcast, but thankfully we have the opportunity to keep going here today. So, for the listeners who don't know who you are, do you mind doing a quick little introduction and sharing a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So at AHEAD, I am our talent development and employee experience specialist, the one and only. But I say that jokingly because it's everybody's opportunity to be an employee experience specialist because it's really all about our culture and making sure that our people have a great place to work. And that takes all of us. So something that I'm super passionate about, and it's something that I get to do here day to day. And this is just one of the ways that I get to carry out that work.
Absolutely. Full transparency for our listeners. Vic reports to me and is on my team, so I do know a little bit about a little bit. I know what you're up to. I know what you do, but I'm glad that I think you described what we do in a really good way. I always like to say that we're putting the employee voice and experience front and center, and that is the most important thing to us. So, for the AHEADians out there who might not know, we're thinking about you, and we want to make sure that you're having a really good time here. I've been here almost like 10 years, so I don't necessarily remember that first like 30, 60, 90, but for you, that's what you get to mostly see out of people. So I'm wondering if you can kind of give us a quick high level overview of what like our new hire orientation is like their first day.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one key piece of information that we kick folks off with is we make sure that they have everything coming into orientation Monday morning, which is usually when we host it. I've found historically through AHEAD and through other organizations that it is crucial to have a successful day one orientation because you're really still working on building that trust with your folks. So, what we really do is we bring people in, we do a virtual orientation session so we can accommodate all of our new hires, no matter where they're sitting. And we really run them through a couple different high level topics, being who we are, so they can really understand what AHEAD is all about and what drives us, what our values are, what we do to really create a sense of belonging for them here at AHEAD, what we do from a development standpoint to help them elevate their development and what we lean into on that front, and then also what systems we're using. So we really try and give them just a whole package with a bow on top day one to make sure that we can bring them in, get them up to speed on what they need to, give them the tools and resources they need to be successful, and then let them carry that forward into their career with us so that they can have really the most impactful job, period.
Love that. Hard stop, most impactful job. It's so crazy to think about. Like, I remember my onboarding at AHEAD, back in the mid 2010s. It was just me in a room by myself with kind of like a rotating door, cast members coming through to talk about what AHEAD was, and then it just kind of felt like I jumped into the deep end of the pool in like an exciting and fun way. I mean, at the time, the company I think was only 150 people, but now that we're so much larger, It's so interesting to see how it changed. And I got to go through that new hire orientation 2 years ago when I came back to AHEAD. But my understanding is that there's been a lot of change even since I did that most recent new hire orientation. So, can you tell me a little bit about how the onboarding process has evolved over time and how it better meets the needs of new hires?
Absolutely. So I think to to address what you're talking about, we've had a very traditional approach to our onboarding process, right? Well, we have a very nice deck that we present, and we're giving everyone the information that they need, but it might not be in the most engaging way that we can do so that really shows people rather than tells them what our culture is and what it's really like to work here from day one, letting them know what they're joining. And I think that what we've done is we've really transformed our entire session from going from really presentation mode to storytelling mode. And by doing that, telling a head story in some of those areas that I highlighted before. But I think what's even nicer as well is like you were saying, kind of feeling like you're jumping into the deep end. You might get the info you need, but then you go, oh my goodness, that was a lot. It was in, a couple hours and I'm trying to digest everything and it's coming at me from all angles. Some other pieces that we've really elevated in the orientation sessions are doing some live demos and tours of the sites that people are going to have to visit. This really helps them understand if they have the right access. It gives people additional ways to digest the information that we're presenting to them. Some people are a little bit more tactile, like myself. They like to follow along and click into the sites. It sticks better in their mind. And offering that also allows different kinds of people more opportunities for success from the get go with us. So, getting to really change those pieces of orientation to really just elevate them and bring them to the next level for the company and our new hires has been really rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm totally like a hands-on learner. So like if someone's just kind of like showing me a PowerPoint slide, I've already got another tab open somewhere else and I'm like clicking through and doing it. But if someone's also doing that, that's like how I've learned a lot of my software skills, like anything in Adobe. I'm just watching YouTube videos of other people walk through it. So for me, that's how I learn. And I'm glad that we can offer that to our new hires.
Absolutely. Follow the leader kind of style, you know? And then if anybody
Yeah.
runs into any issues too, we can address that right on the call. Totally eliminates the need for additional tickets or support team and for the new hire having to wait for that access. So one-stop shop solve right there
Yeah, absolutely. I think they call it like hyper support or something, and it's like hyper support during that new hire orientation.
for sure.
Um, Something you mentioned earlier is how we shifted the focus of orientation from, more like to be more story and culture driven. Like what inspired that change? What kind of drove that?
Yeah, so I think it really goes back to again establishing trust in the relationship with our new hires. I mean, we do it with our clients already, right? A lot of
Yeah,
our business
definitely.
philosophy has to do with establishing that trust and speaking the right language. And I think that applying that also internally has been super impactful and being able to kind of run that parallel to how we do our business operations with external partners. So being able to bring that into orientation has been huge because some of the feedback that we've gotten since we've made these changes, people have reached out directly, people do it in our surveys. They're like, wow, that was one of, if not the best orientation session I've been in. And it really has made me feel like I made the right choice coming here. And that to me is like, okay, you know, we we hit it dead on right there, and, again, with the establishing trust piece, I think it's, again, going back to the show, don't tell, right? Anybody one of the things is, I can show you all these wonderful slides, and that's great, and we can put these things up on the wall, but I'm gonna show you how we bring these to life, and that's really where I think we hit that turning point with building that trust. And if you think of it, because I love idioms, as a good example, think of it as if you're hiring a new baker, right? And you have a bake shop and you're going to bring that person in. They may not know how to bake in your establishment yet, but they're going to come in and they're going to smell the success there. And that's what we want to do in these orientation sessions.
Like, we meet so frequently, and you always have these gems. Another net new one. I'm gonna have to make a book. That is awesome. I love it. That makes me hungry. Uh, um, you know, we were talking about the hyper support that we offer during their new hire orientation and when they're getting started here at Ahead. And I think about also what you're talking about with this establishing trust, right? There's the whole like recruitment process and kind of evaluating, do you want to be at a head? And you get a glimpse into us through, maybe this podcast, some of the content on our website or social medias, your interviews. But where the rubber meets the road, it is day one. Okay, here's reality. You've now walked through the doors. Like, what steps do we take to ensure that that our new hires feel welcomed and part of our culture, like as soon as possible?
Yeah, so I think, like, when we get on, I like to set the stage to make it a little bit personal, make it welcoming, and make it comfortable. Essentially, establish that sense of belonging from the get go, and really, letting them know, giving them the opportunity to introduce themselves, let them know why I joined ahead, a little bit about me, so that we can have that connection off the bat, and offer the same for them. It's actually funny with so many different people across the country in different offices and different roles. That first conversation on orientation, there are so many similarities among people. It's a little bit jaw-dropping, but that's really where that magic happens, is because it makes us really understand that, wait a second, we're all a lot more alike than maybe we think, even though we've never met, and we're all sitting in different locations and working different roles. And usually once people get on and they kind of get the feel for what the session's gonna be about, and they can have that first piece of connection with whether it be another, orientation attendee or myself, I can feel everyone kinda go, "Okay, this is gonna be a good session." And, it kinda helps take the edge off and the nerves of coming into a new role. And so making sure that we can get everybody in the right headspace to be able to then take in all the information we have to share, I've found really, just makes us that much more successful.
Yeah, and I love that that's what we're doing during new hire orientation. It actually reminds me of when we did the PNC Jeopardy game last year,
Yeah.
when we all of a sudden we're looking at everyone's submissions. We're like, wait a second, we've got like 8 or 9 people of the same kind of dog on this team. Have we ever talked about that? Is that like, and you will come to find that we all have something in common with someone else who's here, and we just kind of maybe have to get vulnerable and talk about it sometimes, and then we can make those connections.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, like, what other stuff beyond day one? I know we're here talking about new hire orientation, but like, how do we direct them? Like day two, how do you make sure that you're still continuing to be part of a head?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the big things that I think is super helpful to our new hires after we wrap up our actual live session is a lot of the follow up resources that we provide them with. So, one of the big components is our new hire kind of checklist for resources, what to do day one, what to do week one, all the way through the first month. We also have this really cool thing that I know somebody made, which was our new hire scavenger hunt. I think that you're familiar. And we have some really awesome, and the key point of that is that it's fun. Some really awesome activities that people can participate in. There's 20 listed. It's not required, but it's a really great way to get connected with your peers, other people in different departments, and just learn more about the company as a whole. So it's really a win-win for anybody who wants to partake in that, and we've seen folks really, grab that by the reins and enjoy it. And I think too, another big piece that we really help make sure that they're getting that establishment from day one is, really making sure that they get the slide deck that we go through. Like we mentioned, it's a lot of information to digest on day one. And then from there, they're still got to go meet with their team and their leader and get more role specific orientation items. And so making sure that we also offer people the resources that we've provided in real time after the fact so that they can go back and reference that. I think that that's super critical to people's success. I've found that, really making sure that they have like almost like superpower level access to tools and resources is what really makes people successful.
Yeah, superpower level access. That's a great way to put it. I think I I find that our approach to new hire orientation be really great because we have that like foundational, like here's what everyone's going to be doing, so we're all speaking the same language and we all know how to like walk the same walk, sort of thing. And then those checklists and going off to the teams, then that's where it starts to get customized, right? And then when you're talking about the new hire or scavenger hunt, that's kind of like the cultural piece, right? Like, if guess what, if you're listening to this episode and then you end up getting hired, right, that's one of the checklists on there, right? It's when you get to hear the stories and see the rest of our values like come to life, sort of thing. And I think that's a fun way to get in, like tapped into a company, and then like you said, they're also incentivized to be able to go and do that.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, you're talking about, kind of getting vulnerable, sharing a little bit about yourself and making sure everyone feels welcomed. I'm wondering, can you share an example or like a moment during orientation that captured that spirit of a head's culture?
Yeah. So I think to kind of build off of some of the things we are talking about, right? Like a sense of belonging, establishing trust. For me, when we get into the belonging piece of orientation, that whole section, that really helps us bring together the message of what being one ahead really means. And how we do that through our DE&I council pillars, how we do that through our ERG events, and how we also do that through our Ahead Gives Back charity matching program. I think the important piece that comes out of that entire section of orientation is that our impact goes beyond the business. And that really shows up in our impact on one another. And I think that the way that we're able to carry out those initiatives in the business helps bleed that message into our people, and it helps elevate them in their communities with their peers. And that's really what strengthens our connections and makes us so successful as one ahead.
Very well put. When we're looking at our new hire orientation, we've got the hyper support, we've got the checklists, we've got the culture based story. Like how do we, when we're looking at this, how do we measure the success of this onboarding program? How do we know that what we're doing is working?
Yeah. So late last year in 2024, we actually put together some surveys so that we could start to get actual metrics and data to gauge how folks are feeling after we do our orientation on day one and then after week one to incorporate kind of like what you were talking about and what we touched on earlier with our handoff from a PNC orientation and our TA recruitment process over to the leaders of the teams that these new hires are joining to then get some more role specific orientation, so to speak. So making sure that not only are we as a PNC team doing a great job on day one, are we also having a clean handoff to our leaders at Ahead so that these new hires are just smoothly rolling into that new space that they're filling for that team. So we really assess day one survey to make sure that our orientation session, our laptop setup, receiving laptops goes well, joining the calls. So many things could go wrong, right? And we want to make sure that we are making as much of it go right as possible. And then that week one survey to really make sure that they transition from their first day smoothly into their role. They're getting connected with the right folks. They know where to find things. They know who to reach out to if they need support as well. And so far, we've had a lot of great success with those. We've had a lot of good feedback. And anytime that if we've run into a snag, which has honestly been few and far between, something that we're able to jump on quickly so we can make sure that we don't leave that person hanging because that's definitely not the intention, nor is it the culture that we want to have.
Yeah. I'm curious, like few and far between snags, but I'm wondering like what changes or improvements that have you made that you're the most proud of so far?
Yeah, so I think this one's perfect because you were saying earlier, like I always call it deer in the headlights. So when I first took over orientation, sometimes people can feel overwhelmed, right? It's a lot of information to gather. It's a lot to just present to somebody and say, here you go. And then they go, okay, that's wonderful, but what do I do with this? And so in recognizing that, we've installed a new piece of orientation to kind of do Okta live tours. So from that dashboard where you log in with your SSO and you have all your applications, really showing people, at least from a new hire perspective on day one with 5 different sites, where they're going to go on those sites, what they should look like. If yours doesn't look like this, who to reach out to for support. And I've seen a huge shift in just the facial expressions at the end of our call since we've implemented that because people feel so much more confident on day one because they've been walked through things and then we have some of those conversations in real time instead of having them going to find it and then them trying to say, okay, who did I have to reach out to for this site? Who's the contact for that? This isn't working over here. It eliminates a lot of stress. It also eliminates a lot of additional ticketing for our support teams. And our new hires walk away feeling a lot more confident, which is, again, just another great win win. So I've really enjoyed getting to do that for folks because I can see the weight lifted off their shoulders and just the confidence level just going through the roof just through a simple change like that.
Yeah, totally. It's so interesting when now, kind of thinking back on it, it's like first day, you're meeting like 10, 15, 20 different people. So you're remembering those names and you're learning about like 10, 15 different systems that the company has. And then there are 10, 15 different acronyms that they have and whatever it is. So it's just like literally drinking by the fire hose. But when you get to go to that one place and then, you know, literally putting a face to the name on some of this stuff and how to navigate it, just like immediately makes it so much easier. That's awesome.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, in bringing up how we've transitioned things from presentation to storytelling mode, it continues to tell the story, and we're already working to get them to be a part of it during orientation. All right,
Mhm.
here's your applications. Let's start using them. And those things tend to stick more. It'll make people through repetition, be more confident and then develop the skills and tools that they need to be successful here.
For sure. So, what advice would you give to new hires who are looking to make the most of their first 90 days at Ed?
I love this question. So I think, a couple things that are super, super, super important for anybody starting. Be curious and be courageous. Ask questions and get connected. We really want this to be the most impactful job you've had. And I know that you will start to feel that the more time you spend with us. But don't shy away from bringing your full self to the table and you know, being courageous in those moments where you maybe have a question that you might feel silly, but it's not silly if you don't know the answer because everybody doesn't know the answer. We did new hire orientation yesterday, and Dan actually shared that. He said, I used to be afraid of asking questions, and I'm not anymore because I learned that I'm not going to learn the answer if I'm not courageous enough to ask the question. And if you look at where Dan's been from when before he
Mhm.
started the
Mhm.
company to now, you can see that the proof is in the pudding. I mean, so that's I think is really great advice, but I've also experienced that myself in transitioning from a completely different role where I was doing employee relations to now doing talent development and employee experience. You have to be willing to grow, and you can only do that if you're willing to be courageous. So, my best advice is put yourself out there, and that's really going to be the path that's going to be paved for you to be impactful.
I love that, and that's actually great advice for like literally anyone in my opinion because I just yesterday was feeling like imposter syndrome about asking a question that I thought was pretty straightforward, and I was sitting there, I was like, you don't know. This is growing. You're gonna ask a question, you're gonna go from don't know to know.
Yeah,
That's a good thing in general. Everyone should be able to celebrate that sort of thing. So yeah, definitely ask those questions. Like people are gonna have them, and some people might like be really excited to have the answers for you, sort of thing. So I think it's one of our values: growing, ask questions. It makes sense.
absolutely.
All right, Vic. I got to know. We've been talking about the past and how we've changed it and where we've gotten to today. But where do you see our new hire orientation going in the future? And do we have anything like exciting in the works?
Yeah, so I foresee the session continuing to be a living and breathing presentation where we really continue to implement storytelling. And we
Mhm.
really do that through, constantly updating anything that we're doing internally. We just implemented our new learning and coaching platform and integrated that into our session yesterday. But I think another thing that may be in the works is currently we have sessions where Dan is able to join us, and the feedback that we get on this is fantastic. I think people are really pleasantly surprised to see that this is something that he's passionate about and he carves time out for to join us and meet our new people to really welcome them to the company. And so what we're working on is seeing if we could dedicate one monthly session so we can have all of our new hires join during that time so we can have even more voices hear these questions that are being asked of Dan and be a part of the conversation. So hopefully that will be something that we'll be able to get put into the works here in the future. It is something that we're currently doing, but we're looking to just again continue to make it better, make it more impactful, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how we can do that.
Absolutely. I That is something I do actually really appreciate about a new hire orientation is how much it has evolved, right? Like every week you can ask is like what's new and we might have something change, right? The book on ahead just dropped. Guess what? That's already integrated into our new hire orientation because I've seen the work that you put in to do that. Like you said, our learning and coaching platform. on there as well. So you know that if the business is changing or whatever we are doing, the moves that we are making, that also ends up impacting our new hire orientation. And that's how like accurate and effective our first day is for new hires, where they like have the latest pulse on ahead at what we are doing and what's launched, to the point where they might even end up educating other people in the company about what we offer. So very cool. And I love how like interactive and up to date our new hire orientation is.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate your support with it all. Your expertise and time at the company has really also shown through in the work that I'm getting to do. So it's a team effort, and that goes back to some of the things that we're speaking on, right? Is getting connected, working with others, establishing good relationships, and then making that impactful. So full circle, Nick.
Love it. Well, Vic, thank you so much for hopping on today and sharing, a sneak peek behind the scenes of our new hire orientation and what it's like at your first day here. So thank you.
Anytime. Thanks for having me, and hopefully get to see some more new AHEADians in the coming weeks.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Life at Ahead podcast. Today, we explored how Ahead empowers new hires to succeed with a tailored onboarding experience. We heard from our guests about their journeys, the impact of our talent development team, and how we foster connection and belonging from day one. If you're as excited as I am about what makes Ahead such a special place to work, be sure to join us for future episodes where we continue to explore the heart and soul of Ahead. As always, stay tuned, stay well, and stay ahead, AHEADians.